Hello yourself, and greetings from your pal Joey.
For all its good music and its beautiful color photography, Pal Joey 1957 is thin gruel compared to the hearty stock of the original. When the Rodgers and Hart musical Pal Joey opened at the Ethel Barrymore on December 25, 1940, it revolutionized the state of American musical theater. Ethan Mordden, in his book The Hollywood Musical, lauded it as a breakthrough in character writing and claimed it to be Rodgers and Hart's best work. The lead, Joey, is often seen as the first anti-hero in a musical comedy, and the show, consequently, created the idea that equipping a song and dance production with three-dimensional figures talking and behaving like human beings may no longer strike the boys in the business as merely fantastic. But when the film was adapted to the screen some 17 years later, much of the potency was lost. The sympathies of the audience became muddled, the leads were forced into a conventional Hollywood love triangle, Vera's sexual power was downplayed while Linda was inexplicably sexualized in the screenplay, and Joey, an unredeemable heel in the musical, became a crooner with a soft spot and a character arc. While it could be boiled down to simply a misguided adaptation, the thin gruel of a film that Pal Joey became is the result of a 17-year gap in ideologies, as well as what was acceptable on the stage versus the screen. According to his autobiography, Richard Rodgers was in Boston for previews of his show Too Many Girls in 1939 when he received a letter from John O'Hara asking for him to musicalize a string of stories he had written for The New Yorker. Lorenz Hart, Rodgers' lyricist, loved the idea, and they got to work quickly on what would become Pal Joey. The plot of Pal Joey concerns Joey Evans, a charming heel with big plans to get his own nightclub. Joey meets a modestly dressed and naive stenographer, Linda English, who innocently falls in love with his lies. Later, wealthy and married socialite Vera Simpson shows an interest in Joey, and they start an affair. Vera gives Joey his own nightclub, Chez Joey. Linda overhears of a blackmail plot against Vera. They gain each other's trust and both agree that Joey is not worth the trouble, so Vera throws Joey out and closes Chez Joey. As David Ewen writes in his book Richard Rodgers, the characters were all immoralists, adulterers, cynics, and heels, which presented an obstacle when making a musical comedy. It seems certain Pal Joey would be a commercial failure. The biggest issue seemed to be the lead man, Joey, the anti-hero himself, who ended the show unchanged and alone. The sympathies of the audience were, instead, with the women. The idea of an anti-hero interested Rodgers. It would be different from anything anyone else had ever tried. This alone was reason enough for us to want to do it. While it received much praise, especially regarding the score, some people were left apathetic. Brooks Atkinson said, "If it is possible to make an entertaining musical comedy out of an odious story, Pal Joey is it. Although Pal Joey is expertly done, can you draw sweet water from a foul well?" Nonetheless, it was a commercial success, with the Broadway show running 11 months followed by a 3-month tour and propelling Gene Kelly into the public eye. When it was time for Pal Joey to come to the screen, a lot would have to be changed to make it fit into the Hollywood mold. The screen rights were promptly bought by Columbia, but Pal Joey wouldn't make it to the screen for 17 years after its Broadway debut. According to Adapting Pal Joey, Postwar Anxieties and the Playmate by Julianne Lindberg, one of the major issues of the adaptation process was how ill Pal Joey fit Hollywood conventions compared to what was acceptable on the stage. The restrictive production code rejected any notion of blackmail, sex perversion, adultery, and offensive dialogue in the script, which took away half of the appeal of the stage show. Because of this, Vera's character had to become a widow to make her relationship with Joey more acceptable, and Joey had to have a character arc for the better by falling in love with Linda at the end. The blackmail plot was also dropped. Even the music, which was the other remaining selling point, was heavily weeded out and discarded because of lyrics. Some songs simply had too many pop references to 1940 to be included in the 1957 film, but many had very suggestive lyrics. The musical's biggest hit, Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered, had to be, as Ted Sennett said, scrubbed, so that it could still be included in the movie, such as the removal of the lyrics, "Horizontally speaking, he's at his very best. Vexed again, perplexed again, thank God I can be oversexed again." And, "I've sinned a lot, I mean a lot, but now I'm like Sweet 17 a lot." And the lyrics that did remain were altered, such as the lyric, "Couldn't sleep and wouldn't sleep until I could sleep where I shouldn't sleep," which became, "Couldn't sleep, wouldn't sleep, and what would I do if I shouldn't sleep?" Hart's lyrics seem to be missing their wit and charm in the movie because of these changes. The film shoehorned the characters into a traditional love triangle by making Vera jealous and threatened by Linda, which weakened her character. This element was in the stage play, but it now became the driving factor of the movie. And lastly, a happy ending was required by Henry Cohn, the head of Columbia, so in the film version, Joey had a change of heart at the end of the film and falls in love with Linda, and they walk off into the sunset. Quite literally. According to Dorothy Kingsley, the screenwriter, she opposed this story change, but the studio felt it was imperative to hammer Joey's character and plot into a more traditional and respected mold that could serve as a vehicle for the screen's Joey, which would be played by Frank Sinatra. Pal Joey also had to catch up on 17 years of ideological changes, which had involved the conclusion of the Second World War. According to Adapting Pal Joey, Postwar Anxieties and the Playmate by Julianne Lindberg, many of the changes for the screen version of Pal Joey were in response to a, quote, masculinity crisis that began in the 1950s after the war had ended, which is strange regarding the nuclear family stereotype that is so strongly associated with the era. She writes that many social critics of the time saw the rise of corporate America as emasculating, and the rise of women in the workforce during the war was a threat. Contemporary novels like The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit, 1955, address these issues, questioning whether a man could be fulfilled in this modern environment. In response, Playboy magazine was launched in 1953, which targeted this male demographic that felt emasculated. They pushed the swinging bachelor persona, the man who is not held down by just one woman. As Lindberg says, by the mid-1950s, Frank Sinatra was their poster boy, and therefore, Joey would have to be as well. As McNally writes in When Frankie Went to Hollywood, the Joey Evans of the 1950s, who was able to woo the opposite sex without even trying, became entwined with the star persona of Sinatra, an extension of his public appearance as a hip urban male, epitomized by his use of slang like gasser and broad. Joey and Sinatra were so closely linked as figures that John O'Hara, the author of Pal Joey, joked that he invented Sinatra. While in the musical, Joey was a nightclub dancer, played by Gene Kelly. He became a crooner in the movie to fit Sinatra's strengths. The film relies on the sympathies of the audience to be with Joey, not the women. Joey and his lifestyle are celebrated by the film, whereas the Broadway counterpart demonized him. This is most likely an additional result of shifting ideologies regarding masculinity and lifestyle. As Richard Rodgers said in 1951, it is very possible that Joey will have more friends today than he did 11 years ago. It is interesting, regarding gender stereotypes, that Joey is reduced to a sexual object, but this does not mean that the women in the movie fare any better. In addition to the swinging bachelor, Playboy promoted the sex kitten, or playmate, the woman who is sexually available but also innocent and pure. It also gave way to more derogatory slang for women, such as chicks and mice. Lindberg points out that changes were made to both Vera and Linda's characters to make them fit the sex kitten stereotype better than their stage counterpart had. Kim Novak plays Linda in the movie, who is now a nightclub dancer instead of a modest stenographer, but she still plays the ingenue. We are told that she has ambition and is a nice kid. In the musical, she is the antithesis of Gladys, the nightclub dancer, but now Linda is only treated better than the other showgirls are because it is implied that she actually has talent. Rita Hayworth, in her last picture with Columbia, is a sanitized, less sexually powerful Vera than in the stage play. Lindberg elaborates, Vera can't quite achieve playmate status because she is a bit too smart and a bit too ruthless. She owns Joey for a good part of the film. Her age is also a barrier to bunny or mouse status, although Rita Hayworth was in fact a few years younger than Sinatra. And yet, any power she has, whether it is through status, money, or sex, is consistently neutralized. Take, for example, the song Zip. It is originally sung by Melba, a journalist in the musical, who sings about what a stripper thinks about as they undress. Given that Melba never falls for any of Joey's lies or charms and is quite critical of him, she is a semi-masculine figure who would have been the antithesis of Sinatra's swinging bachelor, and therefore cut from the film. When Melba sang Zip while miming a striptease, it dripped of irony. For the movie, the song was instead given to Vera, where she revealed her secret background as a stripper known as Vanessa the Undresser. This version is not ironic, but is instead sung in the first person and very sensually. now Joey is on the same level as Vera, who has lost her claws in favor of a more Playboy-approved performance. While screen Vera still has monetary power over Joey, the power dynamic is much less stilted than the stage version. Similar to this, Vera's song Bewitched in the stage play acted as a moment of Vera putting down her tough exterior by losing some cynicism for Joey and humanizing herself to the audience. It acted as an important glimpse into her mind. As McNally points out, though, the song in the film becomes a moment for men to look upon Hayworth, Columbia's love goddess, as she slowly undresses for the shower. Although, because of the code, nothing is shown, of course. It is of interest to note that, while sex is a driving factor for both Vera and Joey's characters, only Vera gets this gazed-upon treatment. This is the play between the active male and the passive female, which is the epitome of the male gaze. Vera becomes lost in Hayworth's persona as a femme fatale and is reduced to a two-dimensional woman who is jealous of Linda. Lindberg states that connecting Vera to Hayworth's career, who is most famous for playing Gilda, a femme fatale, provides the subtext that characters who use sex as tools are necessarily punished. I would like to argue that, because Joey gets his happy ending, the film seems to say that women who use sex as a tool are punished. Pal Joey, which had been full of bite on the stage, had become nothing but a whimper on the screen. The script had to go through drastic rewrites to be deemed acceptable, which dropped witty lyrics, reduced Vera's power as a character, and changed Joey's fate. Popular ideologies in the 1950s were also different than they had been in 1940, the year of the musical's debut. Not only were audiences more supportive of the anti-hero Joey by the late 1950s, but a so-called masculinity crisis reduced Vera and Linda to Playboy-approved playmates. It boils down to this: the film celebrates Joey, while the musical uses him as a warning to others. I'd rather take my pal Joey on the stage, thank you very much.